to the academy, well, what I would say from an academic, and I'm looking at this from my own perspective, what I got out of my time in government was a lot of information around people and a lot of contacts. So I would say that 3.5 years of time in government gave me access to knowledge that I would never have gotten if I didn't go. No matter how much I read, no matter how many people I talked to, I would never have made the contacts in all levels of government in a number of jurisdictions that I did. And I wouldn't have really realized what opportunities are there. And this is one of the things I think that governments are just starting to realize, is that there are some opportunities to really engage academics in activities that have traditionally been government focused. So lots of people, lots of programs that I was never aware of, and lots of funding opportunities that I don't think I would ever have even thought about if I hadn't have been in the system. So oftentimes when we're frustrated because we can't get a program funded, it's because we haven't gone to the right place or talked to the right person. And so having somebody that you can call to say, look, I've got an idea, or I've got a project, or I have a student that I really want to get some experience in X, who should I talk to? That's more valuable than anything. And then some applied experience. Just understanding how government works, and someone before I started was asking me about being a little frustrated about not being able to get any inroads into government, and whether or not government is a little leery of hiring PhDs. Not really. There are more PhDs in government than you would think at first. But one of the things that really is an impediment to academics getting into government is the lack of understanding of how government works and the lack of understanding of the political system. And that is the one thing that they really don't want to train. So there are lots of programs. When I agreed to go over, I was going over for a very specific project, so nobody really cared whether or not I knew how government worked. They wanted me to write a document. And so I was probably there about 3 months when I clued into the fact that once this document that I was writing was done, I was really going to be limited in what I was going to be able to get involved with in our department, because I really didn't understand what happened in government. I mean, I understand the political system, but I didn't understand the workings. And so there was an opportunity to take a course called The Machinery of Government, and I did. I signed up for that. It was a weekend deal, and I took it. There are a few that are offered online that just talk about policy, but it's understanding how policy goes through the process, because it's pretty hard to write a good policy document if you don't understand how it gets from idea to law, right? And so that's one of the things that I did, and if you are seriously interested in working for government, that is one thing that I would recommend heavily that you take advantage of. I think that CEL or St. John College, either in Fredericton or St. John, I think they are looking seriously at offering a professional development certificate around that. I think Dalhousie already does, and I think it's available online, if I'm not mistaken. But there are lots of them out there. But just understanding how the Canadian and the provincial systems work is really important. What opportunities did I see since I've been there? There are huge opportunities for academic research. So I can tell you that I will be starting to transition July 1. I'm due back to UNB in January of next year. And I can tell you that I will never have to collect another ounce of data till the day I retire. I have got enough stuff from my time in government that, you know, as long as they sign off on it, which in most parts they do, I don't think I'm going to have to do much except for write for the next 10 years. There's lots of opportunity from a personal satisfaction perspective to have lots of input into the policies that happen. So there's opportunity and they're open to it to provide counsel and to provide input on what government is doing and in which direction they should go. So if you look at the Climate Change Action Plan, for example, there were a lot of scientists who were involved in the development of that document. And a lot of them were master's or PhD qualified because they really needed to have that kind of research input into it. Lots of opportunity for professional development. Every government organization, when you're in there, has huge professional development options that you can take advantage of. A lot of them have online modules, so I think for senior management level, there are 12 modules that you can take, and not all related to government. Very, very much skills that you can take no matter where you go. So I just finished 6 modules on behavior-based evaluations and behavioral-based interviews. And that's the new thing in HR that I probably would not have had access to. I could have read a book, but these are actually professional development courses that are certified and you get your certificate. And there's lots of area-specific project work. So if you want to stay in academia but you're interested in projects, you take a look at the projects that have happened over the last 5 or 6 years in government. Lots of academics have been involved in those projects. So Yves Gagnon, I mentioned before, from the University of Moncton. There's a guy who's doing some wind work, Lucien Chang, here in Fredericton. He's done a lot of project work for government. There's a couple of people who are doing some research work in nuclear. They've also worked on a few small projects for government. And so if you just want to try it out, there's lots of project work out there that you can access. But again, you need to have the contacts. There's not a lot of chatter between the academic institutions and government. And so when people say, well, you need to know somebody to get a job in government, you do. But it's not that you need to know somebody to get hired. It's that you need to know somebody to know that the opportunities are there, because we don't talk. And that's not a criticism of government. It's a criticism of the academic institutions as well, because there are lots of opportunities for government employees to add value to academic institutions too, but we never talk to them. So we teach public policy courses, and we probably never have talked to somebody who's a bureaucrat. Which one would I recommend? People ask me that all the time. For me, I was a little bit late in my career to make a switch. So I really needed to look at the pension aspect, but it's not just a switch to government, it's a switch from institution, because UNB has a defined benefits package, and most places now are on a defined contributions package, and you take a big hit, from a pension perspective if you make that kind of switch. And so for me, from a long-term perspective, not a good idea for me to quit and move to government. If it had have happened, if this secondment had happened 5 or 6 years before that, I may have seriously considered it. It's an interesting place to work. It depends on what you want to do. What are the downsides of government? The downsides of government is job security is a bit of an issue, right? There is no tenure in government. Political people, there are political appointments in government, but they're typically at a very senior level. So that's when you see the DMs, like when the government changed this time, there were a lot of deputy ministers who retired. That happens, but they're political appointments and they know that's going to happen. I was shocked. Has anybody ever seen the letter of offer that a deputy minister signs when they get their job? The wording is, I should have gotten a photocopy and brought it. The wording in the first paragraph is something like, I agree to serve at the pleasure of the Premier, right? So, I mean, you agree when you take that job that you're in or you're out. From the ADM level down, it's less likely to happen, but if you take a look at what's happening in government right now, there's downsizing. It's like every other company. So it used to be that if you had a government job, you know, you were pretty secure. I don't think it's any different now than the private sector, so that certainly isn't there. So that is one downside of it. You are restricted when you work for government in terms of what you can do. So if you are a political animal and you really support a political party and you really want to be involved in the politics of it, when you work for government, you cannot be. You're required to be apolitical. And there are huge confidentiality. You have no freedom of expression in government, right? So there are huge confidentiality requirements, and everything that you do is subject to right to information. So, you know, I sat on a committee because we just passed a new Right to Information Act a few months ago. And I sat on a committee that worked on that particular act. It was interesting because we looked at case studies and, you know, people whose marriages were breaking up who happened to answer a question from a colleague that was work-based, and then in the bottom, you know, just happened to add in there what was going on in their personal life. That information goes out. You know, and there are sections under the Act where you can redact some of that information, but not all of it. And this Act, even less. So, you know, there's those downsides. The money, I would say, going into the civil service is quite attractive, but it becomes less so as you move up. There's a, you know, in the university system, you have your progression through the ranks, and as long as you're meeting the requirements of the job, you'll get your assistant, associate, and then full, or you choose, you know, you can choose what level you want to be in. Government, you have to move. So there's no guarantee that you can stay in a department for the whole of your career. And there's no guarantee in government that you can actually go from one level to another. It depends on whether or not those jobs become available. So if you're at a pay band 5 and you've hit the top of your range and there are no job openings in your department, then that's it.